Good morning. This is the 19th day of our devotional journey as we follow almost Christmas, a Wesleyan Advent experience. And today's devotion that is being shared with us is from Reverend Jorge Acevedo. I'm not sure if I've said that name right. I apologize if I've said it incorrectly. We're excited to be hearing what Jorge has to share with us today. He's addressing John Wesley's question, do I love everyone, even my enemies, even the enemies of God, as my own soul? Wow. This can be deep, but let's jump in, shall we? A few years ago, Jorge says, I was privileged to spend 2 days with the renowned New Testament scholar N.T. Wright. And so he asked him a question. What characterized the first followers of Jesus? And he quickly responded, it was their passionate love for each other and their care for the poor and the diseased. During Advent, we light a candle to represent the love that Jesus brings. And it's not a stretch to say that more than anything else, the litmus test for fidelity in following Jesus is the high call to love people. Think about the witness of Scripture to this truth. In the upper room with his apprentices, Jesus told them straight, so now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I've loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Those beautiful words are found in the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 34 through 35. From the foot washing example in John 13 to the fruit that lasts example in John 15, the rubber meets the road for Jesus in our willingness to love people. He continues by saying the author of 1 John wrote in a similar vein decades later with these challenging words. This is the message you have heard from the beginning. We should love one another. As found in the 3rd chapter of 1 John, the 11th verse. Similarly, the author, he says, of 1 Peter emphasized the love in our relationship with others. And in the letter that we call 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9, it has these words. Finally, all of you should be of one mind, sympathizing with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tenderhearted and keep a humble attitude. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and he would grant you his blessing. Jesus even had the audacity to go a little bit further in the Sermon on the Mount as he upped the ante regarding love. As Jorge recalls the words from Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 through 45. You have heard that the law says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. These are the words of Jesus Christ. So, as a self-described man of one book, that's who John Wesley described himself, John Wesley knew that this high calling to love for those of us who follow the rabbi from Nazareth, as he calls Jesus, his searching question was this, do I love everyone, even my enemies, even the enemies of God, as my own soul? Wow. That just cuts to the quick and reveals the distance yet to be traveled in our pilgrimage from our triune God for all of us. In other words, we have a long way to go in truly understanding what it means to love as Christ loved. We all fall short in this capacity, Jorge says, to love people well. Adventure is a time to remember our calling to love all people and to commit ourselves to love as a way of preparing our hearts and lives for Jesus. That's what we're doing during this Advent season. Pondering deeply what it means to journey with Christ. The high calling is not the problem, after all, he says. is the execution of living a life of radical love. That is our dilemma. Jorge is exactly right. You can say it pretty easily, but to live it is a whole nother thing. He says, come on, let's be honest. People are messy and relationships are hard. And I believe, he said, that the avenue to indeed loving all people regardless of circumstances is acknowledging that you can't. Wow. Let me repeat that again. He says that he believes the avenue to get to loving all people regardless of circumstances is first acknowledging that you can't do it. As a person in recovery, Jorge says, I love the 12 steps. Step 1 reminds us all of our powerlessness. We admit that we are powerless over alcohol. That's our lives have become unmanageable. For Jorge in his 12-step program, that's the first thing that he reminds himself of. So in the words of Wesley, loving everyone, even my enemies, even the enemies of God, requires a power greater than ourselves. It is only as the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts, as it says in Romans 5:5, that God's love can spill out from us and onto others. It's the only way, he says, that it can be poured out from us onto others. The good news is that this power is greater than ourselves, is coming into the world. Jesus is coming to us as God with us. In other words, the power that enables us to love our enemies is coming to be born in a manger and coming to be born in our hearts when we believe. So recently, he says, he spoke with one of the mature saints of his church who had been raised in a very proper church where everyone was just like him. And the diverse congregation that he was now in, and the ministries that have stretched well beyond what he was comfortable with. And this mature saint said, with tears in his eyes, if you had told me that I'd know and love drug addicts, prostitutes, and people with all kinds of tattoos, I'd have told you were crazy, but I do. Jorge says what's happening is that his very mature, spiritually mature friend is learning Jesus' way of loving everyone. These are some good things to ponder this 19th day of our Advent journey. Not only have we learned to love our neighbor, have we learned to love our enemies, even those who are enemies against the very God we love. Blessings.